invoiced. The money was paid to New York City and was in our bank accounts when it was revoked, when it was seized last night from the federal government. That $80.5 million, as has been reported, was $58.6 million from the Shelter and Services Allocated Program and $21.9 million for the SSP Competitive Program. And I want, well, all right, and let me get to the other notes on this here. I mean, let's be clear. This is highway robbery. This is the federal government having already allocated, authorized, awarded, invoiced, and paid $80.5 million to the city of New York. And then Elon Musk, with no legal authority, seizing it back from the city of New York. It is highway robbery, and the city can't stand for it. It actually may even be more prevent illegal than that. I just spoke with the New York State Attorney General, and she is in court on the broader issue of the federal freeze of payments. And yesterday in Rhode Island, the Trump administration sought leave to have more flexibility to freeze payments, which the Rhode Island judge denied. So I'm calling on New York City Corporation Council and the mayor to work with the Attorney General to figure out whether this seizure was in violation of the Rhode Island federal judge's court order, or any other laws, and certainly with the underlying contract that the city has. Again, this is $200 million total that were allocated to the city of New York, the $80.5 million of which was paid earlier this week and then seized last night. One other point is really important to make here. Musk tweeted online that these payments were in some way inappropriate because they're for luxury housing. The federal program we're talking about, the Shelter and Services Program, has a $12.50 a night cap on hotel and shelter prices. And obviously New York City paid much more than $12.50 a night for the tents at Floyd Bennett Field and Randall's Island, much less for the hotels here. So the federal government was not paying extraordinary prices. We did an audit that showed, and you guys know I hit them over and over again across the street where they were overpaying, like they did with .go, like they did with staffing. We found that the hotel program had actually been competitively bid and that prices were appropriate. But independent of what the city paid per night, the federal grant program we're talking about has a limit of $12.50 a night. The federal government awarded New York City $200 million with another $37 million that's supposed to be coming to us going forward, out of over $7 billion that the city has spent over the last 3 years on shelter and services for asylum seekers. And again, these are folks who, for the most part, registered with the federal government when they crossed. In many cases, got sent here by the federal government. New York City stepped up to provide shelter and services and pay for that. We got a paltry $237 million out of $7 billion from the federal government. Again, authorized by Congress, awarded to the city, invoiced by the city of New York, limited to $12.50 a night. And for them to have the gall to come into our bank account, likely against a federal court order, and take the money is something that we cannot stand for. So I want to see the mayor stand up here. In many ways, this is the first test of whether Mayor Adams will stand up to a blatantly anti-New York City action. Again, this isn't an award. This isn't something for the future. He was calling for this for months and months and years. This was the money that he was calling on Washington to give us. They finally give us $80.5 million, and last night they steal it. They take it back, seize it from our bank accounts. So the question for Mayor Adams is, Will he speak up and make clear that this is impermissible? Will he work with the Attorney General to figure out whether it's in violation of the federal court order? Will he fight for money that New Yorkers need to cover the expenses, in this case, that went for money we paid for shelter and services for asylum seekers? But let's be clear, $80.5 million less in our bank account is just $80.5 million that the city doesn't have to meet all the expenses that we have. This is the first critical test of whether we still have independent leadership at City Hall. And I'm calling on him to work with the Attorney General to stand up in court and get our money back. Thank you very much.
How did your office find out about this money? It was like a big red buzzer that went off. And if it's illegal, how are they able to do it? Like, you didn't go to the bank and say, stick them up and give me $80 million.
I mean, when I say illegal, I mean in violation. And again, I tried to be clear. It's, the Attorney General will have to go back into court. What she was in court on yesterday was the question, she's got a freeze on the freeze of payments, right? She went into court after they tried to freeze payments out on grants and the judge said the Trump administration can't freeze those payments. Yesterday, they sought some flexibility to take some of them back, and the judge said no. So they do, as we saw, we haven't seen this before, turn out to have the power to withdraw, to seize funds from our bank account. And in terms of how we found out this morning, this is Krista Olson, who's Deputy Controller for Budget.
Our office, not myself, was able to see, our office, not me personally, are able to see the bank accounts, and we're able to see that these funds were reversed.
I'll just say a little more here. So the city's accounting system is called FMS, the Financial Management System. It's operated by something called FISA, the Financial Information Services Agency, that's co-operated by OMB and the Controller's Office. It's essentially a jointly owned agency. And that's so that we are able to look at the city's books every morning, and when these payments were flagged as a concern in the media, my team this morning went in to look and see and saw that the money had been revoked from the federal government. And as I think one of you then followed up, the federal government confirms that they seized our money back.
Guys, hold. Chloe. We're going to do this one at a time, and I will try to get all of your questions. Raise your hands. I'm going to go over here.
Yes. Yeah, so the $37 million we're talking about, which is $200 million we've already received, including this 80.5, and 37 that's been awarded but going forward. This is all for shelter and services and ancillary costs, including food, for asylum seekers from 2 different federal programs. And yes, of last night's, of the 81 million, 58.6 was from the Shelter and Services Program, which it's my understanding, I will say, we don't have the invoices that OMB submitted to FEMA. You'll have to ask City Hall for those, but it is my understanding that those were submitted to cover shelter costs. And again, we had actually looked at this issue of the $12.50 limit because obviously the city was spending a lot more than that per night. Again, not just for hotels, but even for the tents.
Yeah, Maria.
Great. Yes, I mean, I hope they're also working with the Attorney General because it may not be legal for reasons other than her lawsuit. So there's a few legal questions on the table here. I don't have, we have access to the financial system, but we don't have the federal grant award. OMB, or Corp Council, has that. Generally, that's a duly executed contract. You've won the award, you sign a contract, you invoice, you get the money. If there's no provision for them to take the money, and again, spent long ago, invoiced. Federal government reviewed the invoice and sent us the money. So seizing that money back is quite likely in violation of that grant agreement. I'm glad Corp Counsel is looking for it. And then I think is likely also in violation of the federal judge's court order yesterday in Rhode Island on Attorney General James's suit against the federal the freezing of payments. I am indeed, what I called for a few moments ago, and I'm glad to hear they're doing it, is that Corporation Counsel and City Hall argue the city's legal case to hold on to this $80.5 million. So I'm glad to hear they're conducting the investigation, that they're looking at legal avenues that the city has. I hope they'll also talk to the Attorney General to make sure that any angles from her case are brought up as well. It was seized last night, overnight. Yeah, it was seized overnight. It was seized yesterday late afternoon, about 4 o'clock. I don't. Again, these are folks who are here seeking the opportunity to engage with the federal government to present their case. And in many cases, they were sent to New York City by the Department of Homeland Security, and these expenses were incurred by the city of New York in order to provide them shelter while they are waiting to interact with the federal government. The federal government awarded us this money. I obviously vehemently disagree with policy changes that the Trump administration is looking at going forward, but this is just not about that. Again, I don't have the invoice for this $80.5 million, but I am 99% certain it covers expenditures prior to the Trump administration, right? This was money awarded in the prior administration, spent by the city in the prior administration, invoiced in the prior administration, and then paid yesterday or paid this earlier this week because it was due and owing to us. And I read the report that 4 FEMA officials, including the CFO, were fired for paying an invoice that they owed New York City. That is appalling. Well, they're not funding. To be clear, the federal government is not funding the Roosevelt Hotel. The federal government awarded us $237 million out of $7 billion that we have spent on 100 locations for shelter and services, many of which were tents, and many of which were hotels and shelters. The federal government did not, fund any of them specifically. They awarded us this grant. We submitted invoices. Again, I don't know whether the invoice, it's such a paltry amount of money. I can't tell you whether the invoice specifically covered the Roosevelt versus Floyd Bennett Field. That's another good question for OMB or Corp Counsel, but well, look, $80.5 million is a lot of money. It's a very small percentage of $7 billion. But, it would pay for, a lot of money in New York City's parks or libraries, or feed a lot of hungry people, or pay for a lot more nights of shelter for folks who are homeless on this very cold evening. And again, we invoiced it for this purpose. But if we don't have it, then we just don't have it. That's $80 million less in the city budget. $80 million has to become, if we don't get it back, then the city will have to cut $80.5 million somewhere else. We can't recover money we already spent on shelter and services for asylum seekers, so it would require cutting $80 million of some other city expense. Well, I had never heard. If you had asked me yesterday, does the federal government have the capability of seizing money back from the city of New York's bank accounts, I would have said I'll have to get back to you. So, and I asked my team if we're familiar with any other time it has ever been done. And I can't say it's never been done, but the controller's office, we have a lot of experience, and no one in the controller's office is aware of a previous time when the federal government seized money from New York City's bank account, much less money that they had authorized and paid. And yes, I mean, again, I really am glad to hear that Corp Counsel is investigating and exploring the city's legal options, because separate from how galling it is that they would do this and fire the FEMA officials reportedly and take money back that they authorized and paid, it is a test of, given, you know, the Justice Department memo and the mayor's legal issues, will he stand up for New Yorkers? And I want the answer to be yes. So let's see what plays out with Corp Counsel. I mean, we don't have the we don't have the contract, so that you'll have to talk to the administration about. I have not seen a contract in my life that says, after we award it to you, we sign the contract, you invoice, and we pay you, we are authorized to come into your bank accounts and take it back because of shifting political winds. So I will be stunned if there is a provision in the contract. I could imagine there are many contracts that say, look, we can stop paying you at any point that we want to. You know, we're giving you this as like a discretionary award, and at any point it's ours to freeze or revoke. That's part of what's at issue in the Rhode Island suit. And so the $37 million that they still owe us, they may be within their rights to freeze and not pay us. I hope they aren't, but that'll have to be determined in court. I have not been in communication with DHS other than to see that Craig McCarthy asked whether DHS agrees they had taken our money back as we experienced, and they reported yes, that they have taken our money back, but I haven't talked to them directly. But yeah, here you are. Yeah, I mean, do we know more than paid out late last?
Yeah, I mean, just what we said earlier. It's in a bank account, and then it was reversed without authorization. The payment.
So the payment was like pending.
It wasn't even pending. It was in the account.
So is this like a joint bank account that both the federal government and the city is accessing?
No. This is the city's bank account.
And so how do the feds have access to that? Take that back.
It's a good question.
No, I asked a lot of these same questions, and I mean, the best I can figure, but I really, it's sort of like when, a credit card company reverses a charge, except that in this case, it was already paid into the city's account, and that the feds had the ability in some relationship to the bank. Do we know which bank? I'll ask if we can get the information on which account this was in and what bank it was with. I mean, I find it terrifying that the federal government had the ability to seize money from us in a way that we did not know before. Yes, I mean, I asked, has this ever happened before? No one is aware of it happened before. I am trying to understand which bank it is that did it and what the provisions are. What we can see in FMS is an accounting system that shows it was there. And now it's been reversed, and there are a lot of additional questions. Again, some of them legal, some of them technical, all of them terrifying. So I mean, we're in touch with OMB a lot of the time. So we have been in touch with them and indicated that we saw this. We thought it was important to make public as well. So I mean, and yes, I mean, we have a lot to learn. Again, this is unprecedented. We have a lot to learn about how this happened, and it's critical to investigate and prevent in the future. I mean, look, this is uncharted territory for everyone. I mean, the banks exist under a set of federal regulations, and when people have said that they're worried that the Doge folks are getting access to confidential data of Americans, which includes cities and states, if the question is should New Yorkers and Americans be concerned that it seems the federal government is taking access to go into our bank accounts. I mean, you can't put it under the mattress. So, no, I mean, we are all kind of in this chaotic time together. Am I concerned about the security of the city's bank accounts as a result of this? I am concerned. Do I understand how it is that Elon Musk was able to get our money back? I don't yet have that clarity. I thought it was important to let you guys know, to sound the alarm bell. I'm glad to hear that Corp Counsel is also attending to the potential illegality of it, and we will certainly be following up to figure out what we need to do in terms of banking security. Late last week, is my understanding, yeah. That includes the $80.5 million. There were previous payments of $120 million that I think came during the Biden administration. Was awarded in fiscal year 23 and fiscal year 24. In total, $237 million, $120 that had been paid prior to the change in administration, $80.5 million that had been paid late last week and was revoked last night, and $37 million that we've been awarded but have not yet been sent.
No, it's basically that. This is 80. There's 80, and there's 37 that are attending. There's still 40.
I don't think the 37 has been invoiced for yet. That's my understanding from press accounts. It's so 237 million awarded across 2 fiscal years, 23 and 24. 120 million had previously been paid. 80.5 million is what we're talking about here, and 37 million more awarded, but not yet invoiced. Yes.
So 59 of 80 has been clawed back?
No, all 80 was clawed back. That's 58.6 from the allocated shelter and services program, and 21.9 from the competitive shelter and service program. All 80.5 million was revoked. It sounds like the 59 million was billed specifically for shelter, for hotels, and that the 21.9 million was billed for ancillary. No, sorry.
There were 2 separate SSP awards. One was an allocated amount, the 58.6 roughly, and then the second award was for something called the SSP competitive. And you can look it up online. All of these awards are posted online.
I mean, this is a good question. So I mean, I think there's a set of. I mean, with the OMB opens the bank accounts. We share the accounting system, but we don't. And the Banking Commission, on which there's 3 votes, and I'm one of them, votes to authorize which banks we can bank in, and then individual agencies open their own accounts. But yes, this raises a set of questions about the security of the city's bank accounts writ large from the federal government. I think it is likely, but not certain, that this is a payment revocation, which was done in the way that your credit card company might revoke a specific payment on your bill. And then you might ask, well, could they revoke everything in my account? And you know, generally they don't. But it's a good question. I mean, these are unprecedented. Again, we have not. We don't have an example, or we're not aware of another time the federal government seized money back from the city of New York. And we need to follow up and investigate and figure out what enabled that to happen here, and whether that requires any changes in our protocols, but also, you know, whether Americans have to be worried that the federal government has broader access to our banking system than we understood previously. I don't know the answer to those things yet.
If the administration says we will not be taking any legal action, we will not be challenging this, do you have any confidence to initiate a sort of legal process to claw back the money?
If the administration will not go to court to defend the city's money, I would definitely want to do so. Now, for the controller to proceed to take legal action, Corp Counsel has to grant permission. Sorry? Correct. I mean, that's a lawsuit on behalf of the city, and it's possible, it's technically legal under the charter for the controller to commence a lawsuit on behalf of the city, but Corp Counsel has to sign off on it.
Great. Any other questions? Did I get to everyone?
Thank you all.